What's up guys and welcome back to Moaning. If you guys are new here, then what is up? My name is Erica. Heya, how you doing? And if you're into the history of the ancient Greeks and the Romans, maybe you're just into the mythology and maybe you're just here to see Achilles' triumphant return into battle, well then this is not only the video for you, this one, but this is also the channel for you. You guys are going to want to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so that you know every single time I post in the future. But onto the topic of today's video, and today we're going to be discussing book 20 of Homer's Iliad. So if I could summarize book 20 into one sentence, it would be that after the longest drop in the entire world, Achilles finally returns to battle. Finally, Achilles returns. Like, genuinely, it has been a struggle. Now he's going to get onto the battlefield and show us how it's all done and show us why he is the most feared Greek on, I was about to say the most feared Greek on the Greek side. The most feared warrior on the Greek side, even, is probably a much better sentence to say. So let's just dive into the narrative. Let's just get to it, just so that you guys know the Achilles that lots of people love and adore, because you are very familiar with the Achilles that I am forever frustrated by. The book opens with the Greeks arming for battle and the Trojans arming for battle. This is exactly where we left them in the last book. Once again, for all of these, you should probably be watching the chapter before the one that you need, simply because it makes sense for context. Like, the majority of the time, there's only a couple of chapters which start at a different point. Most of them pick up off of the last line, and that's the same thing with this book. That we've got the Greeks getting ready, we've got the Trojans getting ready. Getting for ready? What does that even mean? Getting ready for battle, right? Is what I was trying to say. So as this is going on, the gods, well, more specifically Zeus, he decides to call a little assembly for the entire godly family, basically. And he sends Themis, the goddess Themis, to go around and to tell everybody that Zeus wants to have this assembly, this meeting with all of them on Olympus. Now, literally everyone is there. Like, every single minor deity is even at this assembly. The only god who is not there is Ocean, because he's kind of busy doing his little oceany thing. So he's the only god who's not there, and Homer notes that is how big this meeting is. That is how important this assembly is. And actually, Poseidon is the first one to speak. Poseidon walks in and he's like, dude, what are we all doing here? Zeus then informs them all that the reason why they have all been called to this assembly is because he says that now is the time that all of them can go down to the battlefield, pick their respective sides, and to fight. He's like, you guys can do whatever you want. I'm not going to try and control this anymore. I'm just going to make sure that the fighting happens, because now that Patroclus is dead, we know that Hector has to die. We know that Achilles has to kill him. So all the gods need to do is they need to go down there, support the sides, support the warriors, so that way that one thing can happen. So Zeus is like, have your fun. All the gods then leave, okay? All of them go down to take a side. And then we have Zeus, who sort of sits up on Olympus, and he is just sort of making sure that everybody is equally as angry on the battlefield, so that they're gonna fight to the fullest. But we then have a nice list, to make it easier for you guys, a nice list of the gods who are on the Greek side and the gods who are on the Trojan side. Because a lot of the time throughout this book, you have to sort of plot it yourself. Lucky for you, book 20 just tells you, here are the gods of the Greek side, here are the gods of the Trojan side. So on the Greek side, we obviously we still have Hera, we still have Athena, Poseidon, and then we also get the addition of Hermes, who fights on that side, and Hephaestus, who decides to side with the Greeks in this moment. On the Trojan side, we still have Ares, Apollo, we therefore have his twin sister Artemis, we have their mother Leto, who also fights on the Trojan side, Aphrodite, obviously, once again, she has been a major goddess on their side, and lastly, Xanthus, who's not all that important, but he is on the Trojan side as well. Cut to the mortals on the battlefield though, and the mortals see Achilles coming out of the Greek side. He's got all of his armor on, this new shiny armor, mind you, that Hephaestus made him. So he's got this new armor on, he comes out onto the battlefield, and the Trojans, bricks. Genuinely, they are terrified, and Achilles is compared to Ares in this moment. That is how scary he is on the battlefield, which, again, I just want to stress, I do not know if this is a compliment from Homer or not, considering, as you guys know, I point this out all the time, Ares really just sits down the entire book. Despite being the god of war, he's constantly sitting, and people are constantly yelling at him to do things, and he just says, okay, and then does it. So I don't know how much of a compliment Homer's giving when he compares all of these heroes to Ares, and then when we look at his depiction of Ares, I'm like, what are you trying to say? But also, I just don't know. I just want to throw that in there. He is compared to Ares. Is it a compliment? Who the f knows? Anyways, though, we have the gods who are now going to play an active role in the battle, but not in an obvious way. So we have Athena, who gives out a cry from the Greek side, and then we have Ares, who gives out a cry from the Trojan side. But both of these are not done to just, replicate screams, as they have been throughout this entire book. In fact, they are used to replicate elements of the earth, which I think is a really interesting twist that Homer throws in. So we know that the people on the battlefield actually don't know that the gods are with them, because we have Ares, who sounds more like a thunder sort of rumbling, the same with Athena, so it's more so we're building all of this tension. We have then Zeus give out an actual thunderclap, which is super cool, because then at the same time we have Poseidon, who like shakes the earth, right? That is his, epithet. Earthshaker. So this all makes sense. We have all of these elements sort of being thrown into the beginning of this battle. We're really heating it up to be this incredibly momentous moment, for lack of a better word. And we have this really great moment right now that is being created by all of the elements getting involved, by all the gods getting involved, by all of the mortals, including Achilles, getting involved. The gods, though, do play an active role in the fighting because they are fighting one another. They are now not taking on the guise of mortals and fighting other mortals. They are not assisting, I was about to lose that word as well. They're not actively assisting another person, particularly on the battlefield. Instead, they're just fighting each other. And as this is going on, I'm not going to focus on that for this book because it happens in the next book and it's way funnier. So I'm just going to focus on it then. But we do have Achilles then mainly stalking through the Trojans specifically to find Hector, because he wants to kill the man that killed his best friend, possibly his lover. He's like, nope, this man has to die. So that is what he's doing, and that is his mission. Now, instead of Hector being roused up for battle in this moment, instead we have Apollo come down and he rouses up Aeneas. Well, kind of. So Apollo looks at Aeneas and he's in the guise of this guy called Lycaon. So Aeneas does not know that he's talking to a god. Lycaon is the son of Priam, one of the many sons of Priam, mind you, because there are like literally a million. He speaks to Aeneas and he's just like, hey man, you took this really big game about like how great of a fighter you were before the Trojan War. We haven't seen any of that. Look at Achilles. He's stalking through the ranks. Why don't you go and fight him? Why don't you show us what you're made of? Fight Achilles. And Aeneas replies, giving us this story, which actually is kind of funny. And you have to remember it because I will be mentioning it in like 5 seconds from a different point of view. So retain this little piece of information, please. So anyways, the story that he tells us is how way back when, like before the actual story that we're given in the Iliad, in this book, right? So before that moment, that actually Aeneas and Achilles have met on the battlefield. And actually what happened was that Ida, the Mount Ida, there was a little town beneath it. And so Aeneas and the Trojans had gone to go and protect this town because Achilles and the Greeks were like, going over to like take it, and they were like, no. So Aeneas met Achilles there, and he said that Achilles literally chased him away. Like, he was so terrified of Achilles. Achilles is a way better fighter than him. And so he's like, what makes you think that I want to go and meet this man right now? He's scary as hell. He's the last Greek that I want to get into a fight with, because I've already done it before. It didn't go so well that time. So, no thanks. He also does stress that Achilles wouldn't be so good in battle if the gods weren't on his side that day, but also that the gods were on Aeneas' side that day, because the only reason why Aeneas lived is because Zeus helped him, and Zeus put courage and strength into his legs so that he could, run away from Achilles. He's like, so I was saved by a god, Achilles is held by a god, but at the same time, it still didn't go well, and I still don't want to do it again. Apollo is not really fussed about this. Apollo in the form of Lycaon, he's a bit like, okay, well, that wasn't the response that I wanted. So instead, he says to Aeneas, like, hey, you got to start believing in yourself a little bit more, because you're also the son of a god. Something that we forget in the Iliad, because it's not mentioned nearly enough, is that Aeneas is the son of Aphrodite. And the only reason why Achilles is like much higher up in importance at the moment in this particular story is because Thetis is an ancient deity. Like, ancient to them, even ancient to Aphrodite. Aphrodite is a fairly new goddess at this point. So Aeneas being the son of Aphrodite, not as important as Achilles being the son of a lesser, more ancient deity. So Apollo just reminds him of that and is like, why don't you pray to a god at this point, maybe to your mother, like all of this, you need to remember that you are just as great, or maybe even more great later on, as we find out later mythology, who knows, you still are just as important as Achilles. And because of that, Apollo now puts all of this courage into Aeneas so that he will go out and fight Achilles, because Apollo was never going to take no for an answer anyways. We then cut to the gods again, and we cut to Hera, who's watching all of this happen, and she's like, well, this is not good. Now that Apollo is encouraging Aeneas to meet with Achilles, this might end really badly. So she talks to Athena, she also talks to Poseidon, and they're trying to figure out what to do, because bear in mind, Achilles has to live in order to kill Hector, so he has to, survive this, but at the same time, Aeneas can't die in this moment. So she's a bit like, I don't really know what to do. Poseidon comes up with the idea that actually they should just stay out of it altogether. And only if the gods on the Trojan side, if they get involved in this mini little duel going on, only if that happens will they get involved. But for the moment, Poseidon is like, why don't we go and sit over there, watch from afar, let the men fight it out unless we absolutely have to get involved. And Hera is sort of calm by this, and so is Athena, and they're just like, you know what? solid idea. So they go away to the stronghold of Heracles, which is just another place that was built there by Athena like 1,005 years before that. So they go there, and actually Apollo and Ares go to join them because they're just like, we're also not going to get involved, so we're going to go and sit with you. So they all sort of go and they sit to watch the battle from afar. So while the gods move away, Achilles and Aeneas start moving towards one another in order to fight. Now, when they get together finally on the battlefield, they get close enough, Achilles is the first one to speak to Aeneas, and he's like, who the in their right mind thinks that they can fight me? Who gave you the encouragement to do so? What makes you think you're good enough to battle me? Like, I want to hear this before we actually start fighting. What Achilles highlights in this speech is actually quite interesting, because what he says to Aeneas is that there's no way that someone who wasn't a son of Priam would come into battle willingly with Achilles without being offered some kind of a gift. Because if he manages to kill Achilles, then he won't be honored in the same way that one of Priam's sons would be honored in Troy. Because, I mean, that's obviously the most important thing, which is why Hector is so encouraged to go and to fight Achilles, right? Because he is an active son of Priam. So he says, you're not a son of Priam. You don't have the same glory if you defeat me. Not that you probably could. He does stress in that moment as well that killing him is going to be way more difficult than Aeneas thinks. So he is genuinely curious at the same time as sort of baiting Aeneas to react. Oh, and remember how I said that I was going to mention the end part of that story of Aeneas running away from Achilles? Well, that happens now, because Achilles literally looks at Aeneas and he's like, I do remember the last time that we met in battle, and I don't know why you were so confident now, considering last time you booked it as soon as I ran towards you. So that episode where Aeneas ran away, Achilles tells us that the only reason why Achilles, ended up sort of sacking the town that was right underneath Ida is only because that's where Aeneas ran to. So when Aeneas ran, he ran so fast and so flat out that he didn't even turn around to look if Achilles was behind him. Now, Achilles was behind him, swift-footed Achilles, so he was like hot on Aeneas' heels, but he literally chased him all the way to this town. And that's the reason why they went and they sacked the town, because Aeneas literally hid in it. So really it's Aeneas' fault that town got sacked in the first place. But like, I love that teeny tiny detail, that like end part of the story that Aeneas obviously wasn't going to highlight. Like, I was so scared I didn't even turn around to see if Achilles was behind me. I was just trying to save my life. He didn't say that before. Achilles tells us that we're a bit like, meh. Aeneas is not really a strong move. Aeneas then replies in a really weird way, because he actually doesn't address the story whatsoever. He does not address like any of Achilles' questions. He instead is like, hey man, I know that you're the son of a god. You know that I'm the son of a god. It's funny because we've never met each other's parents, which I don't think is that funny. Genuinely, when I was reading this, I was like, what? That's not weird. But either way, Aeneas thinks it's weird. And then he goes through, literally guys, he goes through his entire family line. Like, he literally talks about all the people that he's related to, where he's come from, this whole sort of lot where you're reading it just like, what the f does that have to do with what Achilles just asked you? Like, why does this make you think that you can then fight Achilles? Like, it's a very odd little moment. And what's even weirder is that at the end of it, Aeneas is like, but now's not the time to sit around and chat, we should fight, as if he wasn't the one who was just sitting around and chit-chatting. You know? Like, it's just very odd. Anyways, though, Aeneas is the first one to throw his spear. So he throws a spear at Achilles. Achilles holds his shield a little bit out in front of him. Oh, I was trying to show you how far away that was, but my jumper is sort of in the way. Either way, so he is trying to hold it a bit in front of him because Achilles is assuming that the spear is going to go straight through his shield. So he's like, oh, I should probably hold it a little bit away from me. But Homer gives us a little note in this moment that Achilles is such a fool because he doesn't understand how amazing the armor of the gods, the armor crafted by a god, is. So when Aeneas fires at Achilles' shield, it actually gets stuck in the first two layers of the shield. So there are actually 5 layers of this shield. You have the front 2, which are bronze. The middle one is this very thin, very strong sheet of gold, and then the back 2 a tin. So that is how Hephaestus had made this shield. Remember the really pretty shield? So when Hephaestus made that, he made this middle rim the one that was really going to be like the make or break sort of layer, right? So when Aeneas fires the spear at him, it then gets stuck in this thin layer of gold. So it really saves Achilles. In response to this, Achilles then fires his spear at Aeneas, and Aeneas has to sort of duck down. It's really hard to describe these when I'm sitting in a chair, but he's got to duck down and he holds his shield above him. And I'm now out of frame, but either way, he's got the shield above him, he's crouched down. So when Aeneas' spear gets fired through, it does go through the shield and it goes down the back, like down the back of him. That's the only way you can describe it. Literally like this, okay? So the spear is coming in at this angle, his head is ducked, he's not hurt whatsoever, it goes right over him, and it goes right through the ox hide of his shield. Now Aeneas then stands up because he's like, well, I'm not hurt, so I need to get back in and attack this guy. And Achilles in response takes out his sword, because now they're gonna get into like combat, but close combat. And so Aeneas does not pick up his sword. No, instead he decides to pick up a rock, and this rock is so big, guys. This rock is supposedly so big, so heavy that 2 men should not be able to hold this rock, but one Aeneas can. This happens a lot. This happens a lot with Ajax. That is a big description with big Ajax as well. Same thing with Aeneas. Okay, so he picks up this massive rock, and that is when the gods go, no. Poseidon is the god from the Greek side who really gets involved with this, and he's watching this and he goes, absolutely not, because he understands that Aeneas can't die, but also that Achilles can't die. Obviously, we know why Achilles can't die. Achilles can't die because he has to kill Hector, and if that doesn't happen, then like, well, what the was the point of all of this? He has to do that, but also at the same time, Poseidon explains to us that Aeneas can't die because it's Aeneas's fate to not be killed in the Trojan War and to go on and to continue the lineage of the Trojans. I have those lines. Hold on, because those lines are really important. So that is line 302 to 305 if you guys want to go and find where he talks about Aeneas's fate to carry on the Trojan line somewhere else, because this pops up hundreds and hundreds of years later in mythology, where finally someone picks up on it and is like, Aeneas founded Rome. So that is important. I just needed to, that was a little marker there. It is also down in the description because that is a very, very important destiny moment. Anyways, though, Athena then says to Poseidon that Poseidon can go and get involved, but she and Athena cannot because they've already sworn on oath that says that they can't go and get involved anymore. So she's like, if you want to go and save Achilles, if you want to go and save Aeneas, because he has to save both of them, then you can go and do it, but we actively can't because we have an oath against us, so like, bye. Now, Poseidon, obviously he does get involved. He goes right down to where the 2 men are fighting, and he puts this mist over Achilles' eyes so that Achilles doesn't really know what's going on, and Poseidon has enough time to get Aeneas out of there before Achilles goes ape. After the whole mist thing, Poseidon picks up Achilles' spear and he lays it in front of him so that way when he, you know, comes to, he's like, oh my god, my spear is there, which literally happens in like 5 seconds. But then at the same time, he also does this weird thing where he like throws Aeneas. That is literally the word that's used. I presume that he sort of like bats Aeneas away. So Aeneas does this whole mini sort of flying thing and all the Trojans are looking up at him in awe, being like, the fuck is Aeneas doing over there? And he ends up lying, he ends up falling and landing. That was the L word I was looking for, landing. He lands at the outermost edge of battle, so he's safe there. Basically, he can't be killed by Psycho Achilles, nor by any of the other Psycho Greeks that we've thus seen thus far. But Poseidon doesn't just leave him there. Poseidon actually goes over there and is like, what god has made you this crazy? Like, if you actively fight Achilles, he will kill you, and this will not end well for you. So you need to stop doing that. You have a fate. You have a destiny. Do not go back out and fight Achilles. I don't care what god is on your side. I don't care what god is encouraging you. Stop it. If you fight him, you will die. Get over it. Aeneas kind of nods, and then the action then splits back to Achilles, who now has the mist that is, you know, taken from his eyes, and he sees his spear and he's like, what is this? Aeneas was right in front of me, and now I have my spear in front of me. What magical god, what magical deity has done this? Because Aeneas isn't in front of him to distract him anymore, he then is like, I should really just go and encourage the Greeks to get back into battle, and I should get back into battle. So he goes and he like screams at the Greeks, and the Greeks are all like, yeah, Achilles! And then meanwhile at the same time, Hector is doing the same thing to the Trojans. So he's like, guys, we got to attack the Greeks! And all of the Trojans are like, yeah, Hector, let's go! And then they go into battle together. Now, the scene after this is a massive killing spree of Achilles, but they're not major characters and there's no real fun deaths. You guys know that I would get into the nice, fun, gory deaths because I do love a little bit of that. Again, don't report me. This is not like a weird thing. This is a war book. Anyways, so I would describe those to you if there were any interesting ones. There are not. So we're just going to skip that part out, but just that you know, Achilles literally kills so many people and will sometimes kill these double acts as well. So he'll like stab one of them in the leg and then the other one will fall over and die. And then he goes back to the one that he stabbed in the leg. Like it's a lot. It's a really cool scene. Go back and read it though, because it's just too long. Hector though, throughout this scene, he really wants to go and fight Achilles, but Apollo urges him to not go out and fight him alone. He's like, not now and not alone. So Hector goes out into the thick of battle, not intending to meet Achilles. However, one of the men that Achilles kills in his little spree happens to be one of Hector's brothers. That's not saying a lot because once again, there are 1,000,005 children of Priam, but either way, Hector sees this and he's just like, oh no, that's totally wrong. I have to go and fight Achilles. And Achilles sees him approaching and Achilles is like, hey, that's the guy who killed my best friend. Let's do this. Come get it. I obviously paraphrase both of those things. Anytime I do a quote in this video, it has been paraphrased. Please just take that into consideration. So the 2 men meet and Hector actually says to Achilles that even though he knows he's the weaker fighter out of the 2 of them, that it's not up to them. It's actually up to the gods. So he says there is a good chance, if it is up to fate, if it is up to destiny, that was a mouthful, then there is a good chance that Hector will defeat him. And obviously just Achilles kind of like laughs and doesn't really focus on it like at all. And because of this, Hector does fire his spear at Achilles, but Athena gets involved because once again, Achilles can't die now. Achilles has to kill Hector. So she gets involved. She blows the spear away. And in fact, it does this like boomerang thing where it comes towards Achilles and then she just basically turns it around and it goes right back to Hector and it lands at his feet. This makes Achilles hella mad. Are we surprised? No, he definitely has an anger management issue because he is a child. So he then runs at Hector to stab him. And obviously Apollo sees this and Apollo is like, well, now is not his time to die. And so he then protects him with a mist so Achilles can't see him. So Achilles just sort of sees this weird mist and he attacks the mist 3 times. 3 times he doesn't hit Hector. He doesn't hit anything, right? Because it's literally a divine mist. So he then attacks a 4th time. Again, literally nothing happens to Hector because he can't see Hector. That is the key. He cannot see this guy. I don't know why he's still attacking this space in front of him. But on the 4th try, Achilles is so frustrated by this that he literally yells at Hector and he's like, "You're a dog! You have only not been killed by me because you have a god on your side and only because Apollo is protecting you. So whilst that's happening, I'm gonna go and kill a bunch of other dudes and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna kill you." And he does that. There's a whole other massive killing spree of Achilles where he kills a bunch of other people. Again, you're gonna have to go and read that because it will just be me doing name, death, and they are not important enough, nor are the deaths fun enough for me to describe. However, there is a huge killing spree of Achilles, and in fact, he is described as being like a wildfire. He's described as a fire in dry wood. Like, that is how crazy Achilles is on the battlefield, okay? He's just sweeping through, and he's sweeping through everyone. Like, even when you read it, you're like, holy mother of sweet baby Jesus. Now, I'm actually going to leave you with just the last line of the book today because I think it's a really powerful one. And I did write this down on a piece of paper from my Lattimore translation because it is one of my favorites of this book. So the last line is actually, where is it? Oh, there it is. The last line of this book is, "The son of Peleus was straining to win glory, his invincible hands spattered with bloody filth." And I just think that that's a perfect end to the book. I love that line, and that's how I want to leave this video, just that you guys know how Achilles is on the battlefield because he's a bad man, even though he's a child. He's a bad man. We gotta give him credit where credit is due. So thank you guys so much for tuning into book 20 of Homer's Iliad. If you guys enjoyed this video, if you have been enjoying this series, then please hit that like button so that I know, because that way, yeah, I really like the positive reinforcement, basically. Also, just so that you guys know, because the series is coming to an end, I'm currently trying to figure out what the next series is for this YouTube channel. So if you don't already follow Mona Inc. on Instagram, you should probably go and do that because I've been putting up so many polls because I want you guys to choose what we're discussing on the channel because I want to be giving you guys content that you actually want and that you actually need. So go follow Moan on Instagram. I'll probably be doing polls as well on Twitter, just to double check that everybody is happy with the content that we're producing in the future, that I'm producing for you guys in the future. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll be seeing you next time with more Iliad videos, with the last couple of Iliad videos here on Moan Inc. We'll see you then.